going to be my year, I said to myself as I was deciding what to wear for the first day of 10th grade. I was preparing to have the best year of my life, not knowing that I was about to experience the worst one yet. October 17th, 2012 is a day I will never forget. It was the day I received a call from my dad saying that my mom had almost died during her biopsy surgery to see what type of cancer she was preparing to battle. October 17th was the day my world shattered. Now, not only was I having to deal with the emotional stress of my life about to completely change, but I was also having to hide my new knowledge of what was going on in order to keep my younger siblings in the dark. I mean, it was hard enough they were already dealing with the idea of their mom going through cancer. I didn't want them to feel everything I was and have this little voice in their head saying, "My mom almost died last night," as they were trying to focus on their classes that day. And considering how I have 5 younger siblings, that would have been a lot of extra emotion for me to deal with. It was all too much. Being the oldest of 6 children is a huge responsibility that I believe has really molded me into the person I am today. And with everyday responsibilities that come with being the oldest, also come with the responsibility of having to take care of my siblings if anything were to ever happen to my parents. So, once my mom began treatment, there are many things she can no longer do. For example, helping with homework, driving my brothers to soccer practice, setting up appointments, attending events at our school, cooking dinner, all things most of us probably take for granted. Growing up, I'd always been a very goal-oriented person. Looking back a few years prior to my mom's diagnosis, in 8th grade, I created a 10-year plan. This plan included graduating in the top of my class, completing an undergraduate degree in political science, and then going on to law school. I had my whole life as a young adult planned out at the ripe age of 14. My first year of high school, I worked very hard to be in all honors classes in the Leadership Institute in 10th grade. I met this goal. But when I heard the news of my mother and not knowing the severity of her diagnosis, I began making a new plan, questioning if I would even be able to attend college. So, my mom,
You got it. You got it.
Once my mom began treatment, everything changed. With my dad working full-time, I was really the only one in my family able to take up the responsibilities of the household. And let me tell you, that was not easy. Now that I was doing everything my mom would do around the house, in addition to all of my accelerated classwork, I was getting approximately 4 hours of sleep, and my friends would cover for me in class as I slept so I wouldn't get in trouble. When I was writing this, I had to suppress a lot of emotion in order to get through it, and it's just all hitting me right now, so I apologize. Anyways, 2 weeks after my mom's diagnosis, I started becoming sick without explanation. And despite how incredibly ill I became, I somehow managed to turn all of my work to my teachers through the help of classmates and email. And I just stopped putting my health as a priority in order to take care of my family. And when I did that, I don't know, I just acted like I wasn't sick. And so I was like, what's going on? happening? What's going on with my body? I didn't know, and I ignored it. So as I was like turning in my assignments to teachers, I was at home sick, and it became concerning. So after a long, tedious process of ruling out pneumonia, bronchitis, and mononucleosis, and taking antibiotics that did nothing, my family doctor decided to schedule blood work, a chest x-ray, and then finally a CT scan, helping us conclude that it looked like I was preparing to battle Hodgkin's lymphoma, the same exact cancer as my mom. Now, not only were we getting ready to battle cancer at the same time, but it was going to be the exact same kind. In shock, when I was told the news, I ran to the bathroom and just cried. So now what? Who's going to take care of my siblings now that I'm sick? How are my friends going to react to the news? How is everybody going to react to the news? Now that both my mom and I were sick, my entire world just fell apart. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and I was just lost. So after we found this out from my doctor, he set me up with an oncologist at my local children's hospital, and we began making a plan. So first we scheduled my biopsy, and once we received the results from it, confirming my diagnosis, we created a course of action for treatment. At 16 years old, I was having to make split-second decisions about things I never thought I would ever have to think about. Most girls my age were figuring out what to wear for homecoming while I was making plans for my entire future. So I decided on my own, without any help from my family, to participate in an experimental ovarian freezing surgery as insurance just in case I were to go infertile during my radiation and chemotherapy treatment. My first chemo wasn't too bad. I was mostly just tired and uninterested in eating anything. But something that came as a bit of a surprise was that when I was home for the holidays, on December 26th, my hair started to rapidly fall out. And by New Year's Eve, I was completely bald. I was devastated. Growing up, my hair had always been such a huge part of my identity, and I loved playing with I just loved playing with it and making intricate braids and coming up with fun styles. It was such a big part of my identity, and I just lost that part of myself. And the transition into being bald was brutal and just downright scary, because I was at an age where you have this societal pressure to look a certain way, and I didn't want to be the bald girl. And I didn't want to be treated differently, and I didn't want to be dehumanized for having a bald head. So I always wore wigs while in public. I didn't want to be treated differently as I was running errands or going shopping. However, covering my head didn't stop my friends from treating me differently. Not everybody realizes this, but cancer can be a very lonely battle. You get a lot of open-ended offers like, if you ever need me, I'm just a phone call away. But you never get offers like, hey, is there anything I could pick up for you at the store? Or would it be cool if I came over and just watched a movie? Some people who I considered my absolute best friends told me They stopped talking to me because they couldn't emotionally handle being friends with someone going through cancer. And I really struggled with that because I'd always made a strong effort to not compare my pain to others. And I was always the advice giver in my friend group, but they stopped coming to me because they perceived my problems as more significant than theirs, and they didn't want to burden me. But I really struggled with this because I wanted to know what was going on in their lives. I wanted to feel included. I wasn't going to point my finger and say, what you're going through is no big deal because I've been through cancer. That's not how it works. You see, the hardest thing about going through cancer wasn't the treatment itself. It was feeling like I had nobody to call when I was having a bad day because I was made to feel like my friendship was a burden. The hardest part about going through cancer was not feeling wanted. However, while I was feeling alone, I knew there was one other person in this world who understood what I was going through: my mom. While all of her friends were away in Michigan and Missouri, and most of our family being scattered across the country, she knew what it felt like to have nobody besides each other. However, one of her acquaintances really stepped in and helped our family, along with many churches and local organizations. And while they were all very helpful during the first half of our treatment, everybody just kind of disappeared once we were deemed cancer-free. Even though we were about to face weeks of radiation treatment. While they were all very helpful, and then they left, like, who was there? Nobody. And so, I don't know. I guess it was silly to think that we had finally found a community of people who, after living in the Carolinas for 6 years, who genuinely cared for and wanted to welcome our family with open arms. The locals only looked at us as a mission project, but nothing more than that. Maybe it was silly to think that people would want to be in our lives during and after the cancer. But I suppose you can't have everything in life, because once I announced I was in remission, it was like everyone at school wanted to be my friend. Where was everybody when I was sick? Okay, so now since I'm technically better, everybody all of a sudden wants to know what I went through. Got it. Well, that wasn't so easy, because most of what I dealt with while in treatment, I was still dealing with when I decided to go back to school. And the transition I just wasn't ready for. The hardest part about my survivorship was that the faculty and my peers didn't know what I was dealing with until it was too late. And I had grown accustomed to nurses and my family catching my side effects before something bad happened. So not everybody would recognize when I was having frequent dizzy spells, or I was still learning to deal with hand neuropathy and writing for long periods of time, and remembering to feed myself so I wouldn't pass out from hypoglycemia when I wasn't feeling hungry. These were all big changes that I wasn't ready for. And I had limitations I didn't used to have. However, something that came with these limitations were new strengths. And I've learned to look at my cancer as something positive, even though originally, even now, I still look at it as this burden on my life that can never be lifted. Sometimes I have days where I'm depressed, and like it's still here. And even though I'm cancer-free right now, I'm always living with this underlying fear of a reoccurrence, or developing a new cancer from the treatment that cured the last cancer I went through. Dealing with these thoughts every day, it's really hard. And I have to look at it as something that I was meant to have, this burden I was meant to have, this burden I was meant to carry. And that's okay, because I'm taking this and I'm using it to make a positive energy and to look at this cancer as something positive. And because of my experience with treatment and everything, I've been able to make changes in my local children's hospitals and the education system here in North Carolina. And I've been able to grow and change. Now, resilience is something people have used to describe me then and now. But resilient is something I am not, because resilience is the act of bouncing back after going through something traumatic. But you never actually bounce back after going through cancer. You're always going to be dealing with the after effects of treatment. And while I'm sensitive to the fact that not everybody's going to recognize that I may have to take more precautions while out in the sun, or that I drink an absurd amount of water, because if I don't, my mouth will completely dry up because my body cannot produce a normal amount of saliva. Or when I politely decline a dessert, it's not because I don't want it, it's because I have very specific restrictions on my sugar intake. These are all limitations that I have now, and they're all things I'm always going to be dealing with. And they're never going to end. So I can't go back to the person I originally was. It's impossible. And so it's really hard, because a lot of employers or my employers and teachers back then would look at me as the old Hailey, the normal Hailey, not recognizing that I'm not the same as I had always been. That's why I don't believe in resilience, because it's impossible. I really believe it's something that is unachievable once you've been something so hard. Sure, you can learn to cope with the way things are now, but you'll never go back to being exactly who you were, because we're constantly growing and changing as individuals. I am not the same person. We are not the same person we were yesterday. I'm not the same person I was when I wrote this TED Talk. And what I want everyone to take away from this talk is how to grow and change as a person, to ask questions about things you don't understand, to be a friend who is present, but most importantly, take this knowledge you acquire and use it to make a positive difference in your workplace, schools, friend circle, local community, nationally, and even globally. Thank you.